Okay guys, so this week's episode is actually the first episode since season 2 started that I can actually look at the manga, find the chapters that this episode is based off of, and say for certainty that this episode followed beat for beat the plot of those chapters without making any major changes to the story. Now don't get me wrong, there are some minor changes that the episode made, like for starters, I believe the way that Nafumi ended up meeting the boat hero, whose name I could never pronounce even when they said it after watching the anime episode. But the way he meets him in the manga, I think is a little bit different than the way he meets him in the episode, but ultimately, it doesn't really matter how he ends up meeting him as long as he does end up meeting him. There's not a lot of major changes in this episode that actually really would affect the overall story from the plot that we got in the manga, and this is actually probably what most fans enjoyed from this episode the most, because actually when I went on Verve and checked the comment section after this episode, I didn't see one bad comment about this episode. In fact, it seemed like everyone was enjoying it. Now, it's been a few hours since the last time I checked it, so maybe there might be one or two there now, but for the most part, everyone who watched the episode, including the people who were pretty much manga loyalists and, original content loyalists, were pretty okay with this episode, even with the minor changes made. Because at the end of the day, those minor changes don't affect the overall story and do major changes to character development. Like, how Nafumi ends up being the boat hero doesn't really matter. The important thing is that he actually ends up meeting him, and because of their meeting, he ends up creating raph-chan, who is just as adorable in the anime as she is in the manga. And that we use raph-chan and Kizuna's familiar Chris in order to find clues as to where Glass and Raphtalia are, which by the way, we end up finding out in this episode that they're in the same location. So we kind of course corrected back to the original content where we find out that Raphtalia has met up with Lark's group and is working alongside them. Now, the most important thing from the beginning half of the episode is basically them creating raph-chan and finding out where Raphtalia and Glass are. But one thing that actually is worth mentioning is the fact that when Kizuna meets up with her followers or the people who kind of worship her as a hero or cardinal hero in this country, she ends up letting slip that Nafumi's also a cardinal hero from a different world, which gets a bad reaction from all the people around her, telling her that he's there to basically destroy their world, which is something that we already know that Lark and his group were there to do in his world. So pretty much it's just kind of sowing the seeds that Kizuna, which I already kind of figured she figured out or kind of was getting hinted toward in the last two episodes, but it seems like she kind of ignored everything that Nafumi and Rishio were saying in those episodes and kind of just only paid attention in this one. But she's now starting to understand that Lark and his group were up to something in his world, or in Nafumi's world, and basically that something's going on that she's not privy to just yet, which is a plot point that we're going to get back to once the two groups actually end up meeting up again and they actually have a chance to sit down and talk. And then in the second half of the episode, when Nafumi and them go to a different country, which is actually an enemy country allied with the country that originally captured Kizuna, they are searching for Raphtalia and Glass in that country, and while they're searching, Nafumi actually ends up hearing Hilo singing, and he ends up finding her being used as some kind of sideshow piece by some noble who got her from his dad, who was implied actually got her from Kyo at some point. Anyway, basically Nafumi wants to kill the guy immediately, and this actually infuriates him enough to basically activate his rage shield for the first time since he entered this world. But Izuna actually calms him down, basically tells him, hey, let's wait off and basically figure out a plan in order to sneak in there and rescue people from the shadows without being caught. And once they actually do, we get this kind of badass moment from Rishia and Nafumi where the two of them are like, we're gonna go in there, we're gonna rescue Philo, and we're gonna torture this guy for information, which is normal for Nafumi, but the fact that Rishia was this angry and was basically on board with the plan kind of was surprising, but also very entertaining to see. Anyway, they end up saving Philo, and then while they're on their journey again to find Raphtalia, her slave mark disappears, which means she's no longer a member of Nafumi's party, so we can't see her stats anymore, and this immediately makes them worry that she might be dead. But then they realize that raph-chan is still there, and we end up finding out earlier in the episode that as long as raph-chan's around, that confirms that Raphtalia is still alive. So they know she's still alive, but he's worried because of the fact that she can't be located by him, or you can't see her stats anymore, or even see her as a member of his party. And then we end the episode with Raphtalia basically being taken out of a cage into a snowy place. I don't actually know where this place is, but she's basically being led into, I guess, a jail cell, most likely where Lark and his group are currently at. And this is going to be leading to her kind of joining up with them, which is actually kind of interesting because this is not content that we got in the manga. The first time we saw Raphtalia after they entered this world in the manga, she was already with Lark and his gang, and they were already in the country that they're currently in right now. Now, like I said, I haven't read a light novel, so I'm not sure if this is actually content from the light novel that the manga kind of skipped over, which if it is, this is actually kind of interesting because this will be my first time seeing this. But even this ends up being just anime original content, I'm still interested in seeing where this ends up going. But anyway, that's pretty much it for the episode, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. If you did, please give me a like, subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate that, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.